I watched my bakery, the place I poured my blood tears and youth into, turn to ashes on a freezing Christmas night. I thought the culprit was a stranger. But no. The person who burned down my dreams was the man I was about to call husband. And the real twist, my own sister gave him the money to do it just because I inherited our mother's house. They laughed at my pain until I decided I would burn their entire world down. If you think this is just another ordinary family story, you're wrong. Subscribe now to catch our next fiery episodes. Emily Parker always believed that December was made of sugar and hope. Growing up in a small Texas town before moving to Austin, she had spent every Christmas baking gingerbread men with her grandmother flour smudged on her cheeks while pine candles flickered in the kitchen window. Those quiet winter memories became the blueprint for her life, simple sweetness wrapped in warmth. Now at 28, she was living that blueprint on a grander scale. Her artisan bakery, Sweet Haven, perched on bustling 6th Street with its mint green storefront, had become a local institution within just 3 years. At dawn, tourists lined up for her cinnamon cruffins dusted in gold sugar, while office workers grabbed signature praline lattes before heading to the Capitol. Wedding planners begged for her custom sugar flowers. Magazines featured her dark chocolate mousse towers, sculpted like art installations. This December was meant to be her crowning glory. Not only was Sweet Haven breaking every holiday sales record, but in just 2 weeks, she would marry Logan Bennett, a financial advisor with model-level bone structure and a disarming laugh that first made her knees go weak when he walked into the bakery last spring, pretending to order muffins for his office when he really wanted her number. "Hey, sugar queen." His voice always dropped to that teasing, lazy Texas drawl when they were alone. "Marrying me gonna be your sweetest recipe yet." She would giggle and brush flour off her apron, cheeks flushed, thinking about the lace gown hanging in her apartment closet, the ivory tulle pooling like clouds around her feet when she tried it on, alone at midnight. The wedding would be held in the Austin Botanical Gardens, under a canopy of twinkling lights, with 6 bridesmaids in sage satin and 300 guests ready to toast to their perfect future. That morning, Emily woke at 3:45 a.m., without an alarm as always. Her studio apartment smelled faintly of lavender dryer sheets and caramel from her hair. She tied back her golden brown curls into a messy bun, brushed a dot of pink onto her lips for confidence, and pulled on her embroidered chef's jacket with Sweet Haven. Emily Parker stitched in sage green thread over her heart. As she stepped out into the frosty darkness, the city was silent, sleeping beneath rows of holiday lights strung between lampposts. Emily unlocked the bakery and flicked on the sconces. Instantly, her world glowed. Ivory subway tiles gleamed against pale oak counters. Glass display cases awaited her sunrise creations. She inhaled deeply, catching vanilla beans, burnt sugar, and faint lemon zest. The shop was hers, every inch of it paid off with blistered fingers, 14-hour shifts, and a courage she'd only discovered kneading dough before dawn, when no one else believed a 25-year-old girl could build an empire of flour and fire. "Let's make today beautiful," she whispered, flicking on her playlist, soft indie guitar riffs filling the empty space. By 6 a.m., Logan appeared with a peppermint mocha in one hand and a brown bag in the other. "Your breakfast, Miss Parker," he said, bowing dramatically over the counter as customers behind him chuckled. "Another kolache from Mr. Murphy's," she teased, accepting the coffee with a smile. "Tradition is tradition. Besides, you'll be too busy baking everyone else's breakfast to eat your own." He leaned over and kissed her forehead, his lips lingering a moment longer than necessary, drawing out a sigh from Emily. Their wedding bands sat together in her office drawer, ready to be engraved later that week. Around them, the bakery thrummed with holiday joy. Outside, Children pressed noses to the glass eyes widening at gingerbread houses laced with spun sugar icicles and marzipan snowmen perched atop sugar cookie roofs. Elderly couples clinked mugs of mulled cider, laughing softly over crossword puzzles. The local radio DJ announced a cold front moving in from Dallas, promising a rare Texas snowfall by midnight. By late afternoon, Emily stood in the back kitchen piping caramel rosettes onto eggnog cheesecakes, humming softly to Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas, when Logan's hand slid around her waist from behind. "Hey," he murmured into her ear breath, warm against her skin. "Tonight, let's finally finalize our seating chart." She laughed. "If you actually help this time instead of making whiskey sours, no promises." He turned her to face him, eyes sparkling with what she thought was love. "I love you, Em. I love you more," she whispered. Later that evening, after closing time, Emily sat at the bakery window with a cup of hot tea, watching the final shoppers hurry past. She texted Logan, "Miss you. Be safe driving." He replied instantly, "Always am. Sleep soon, Angel." She smiled, set her phone down and closed her eyes for a moment. The hum of the refrigeration units, the faint ticking of the wall clock, the lingering scent of peppermint ganache and baked brioche filled the silent store. Everything was perfect. Everything was safe. At 11:42 p.m., her phone buzzed again. Groggy, she reached for it, expecting Logan. Instead, a silent alert from her security system flashed red across the screen. "Fire detected, Sweet Haven." She bolted upright, heart slamming into her ribs. Her mind refused to process the next alert. "Fire department contacted. Fire detected." Throwing on her parka over pajamas, she sprinted out into the freezing Austin night. Bare feet, in boots, unlaced adrenaline pounding so hard her ears rang. Ice mist blew sideways as she drove every red light an unbearable eternity. By the time she turned onto 6th Street, flashing red lights strobed against buildings, illuminating white smoke pouring from her bakery windows. "No," she screamed, pulling up behind 2 fire trucks. Ash fell like dead snowflakes onto her windshield. Flames roared inside the storefront, devouring every shelf, every handcrafted countertop, licking up the walls where she'd painted lilac vines with her grandmother's favorite Bible verses entwined. "Ma'am, please step back," a firefighter shouted, but Emily stumbled forward anyway, arms outstretched like she could reach through the cold and snatch back her life from the inferno. The heat slammed into her face, drying her tears before they fell. "Emily." A neighbor grabbed her shoulders. "It's gone. Don't go near it." "It's too late." But she didn't hear him. Her scream cracked the frozen air, mingling with the sirens and crackling wood as Sweet Haven burned to its bones. She dropped to her knees on the icy sidewalk, the world narrowing to the smell of burning sugar, acrid smoke choking her lungs. Customers and friends gathered behind caution tape covering their mouths, whispering her name, their eyes filled with pity and fear. Emily gripped the concrete nails scraping heart, thudding against the frost-bitten ground. Somewhere in the chaos, she felt a dark certainty rise like bile in her throat. This was not an accident. Someone just burned down her future, and they weren't finished with her yet. Emily sat cross-legged on the worn leather couch in her tiny apartment, staring at the silent phone on the coffee table, as though willing it to ring. Her knees trembled beneath her flannel pajama pants. It had been 48 hours since the fire turned Sweet Haven into ash and twisted metal. 48 hours of phone calls, insurance paperwork, and desperate pleas to strangers whose only job was to say, "Please hold." Outside her window, Austin's morning sun rose with brutal indifference, casting golden streaks over a city preparing for Christmas celebrations, wedding receptions, and crowded bakeries. All the things that should have been hers. She dialed again, fingers shaking so badly the numbers blurred. "Hello, this is Roger with Blue Hill Insurance Claims." How may I help you today? Roger, this is Emily Parker. Claim Nate 2375. I'm just checking again on the status. You said yesterday the adjuster would... Yes, ma'am. I see the notes here. We're still awaiting the fire marshal's final report before any disbursement can be approved, but the fire marshal said it might take weeks. My rent is due in 5 days. My wedding is... Her voice cracked. It's in 10 days. Silence hummed on the other end before Roger's sigh crackled through the line. I'm sorry, Ms. Parker. I really am. But until we receive the official documentation, there's nothing more we can do. She pressed a trembling hand to her mouth, fighting back tears as the call ended with a polite beep. The room seemed to tilt around her walls, caving in with the weight of reality. The invoices stacked on her coffee table blurred under her gaze. Flower suppliers, refrigeration repair companies, flower shop retainers for her wedding. A towering paper city built on the foundation of her bakery's success now reduced to cinders. Her phone buzzed again. For a heartbeat, she hoped it was insurance. Instead, Logan Morning Angel. Picking up coffees. Be home soon. She read the message twice, her heart aching at the little diamond ring emoji next to his name. She pressed her palms to her eyes, trying to block out the image of what she had lost. Her store. Her staff's Christmas bonuses. Her dignity. If the insurance didn't come through in time, they would lose the wedding deposit. Her parents had already contributed all they could. Her father's pension was just enough to keep their farmhouse repaired. Emily refused to ask them for more. She curled up tighter, clutching the old embroidered pillow her grandmother had stitched. On it were the words, "Rise like dough." She had always loved that saying. Today it felt mocking. The front door opened with a burst of cold air and Logan's heavy footsteps crossed the room. "Hey, Sugar Queen," he said softly, kneeling in front of her with 2 steaming lattes. His dark hair fell perfectly across his forehead, as though even grief obeyed his charm. He placed a gentle kiss on her knee through the thin cotton pants. "Drink this. You need to keep up your strength." Emily took the cup without tasting it, staring instead at the floorboards that needed refinishing. I called them again. They said nothing will move forward until the fire marshal finishes his report. Logan exhaled sharply, sitting back on his heels. "It's bureaucracy, Em. They're all the same." "But I need that payout. Without it, we'll have to postpone the wedding, or cancel it entirely." "Hey." He set his coffee down, reached up to cup her face in his palms, forcing her to meet his eyes. Hazel eyes flecked with gold and green eyes she had once thought of as safe harbors. Nothing is cancelled. Worst case scenario, we push it a couple months. So what, I'm not marrying the bakery. I'm marrying you. She closed her eyes, letting his words warm the frozen edges of her resolve. His thumbs brushed away the tears she didn't realize had fallen. For a moment, just a moment, she let herself believe it would be okay. Then his phone buzzed in his jacket pocket. Logan's entire body stiffened. He dropped his hands from her cheeks and stood abruptly, grabbing the phone and turning away so quickly it left her blinking. "Who is it?" she asked softly. "Work," he mumbled, thumb flying over the screen. His shoulders hunched in a way that seemed out of place for a man known for broad-chested confidence. "I've got a client meltdown this morning. I need to call them back outside. Logan." But he was already walking to the door, phone pressed to his ear. "Yeah, Mark. I'll call you back in 5, he said, voice, rough eyes darting to Emily before he slipped outside, shutting the door quietly behind him. She sat frozen, her coffee cooling in her hands, staring at the closed door. Something twisted deep in her gut, sharp and sour. It wasn't just the insurance delay or the wedding stress. There was something about Logan's entire posture, the way he shielded his phone, the sudden coldness in his tone. For the first time since the fire dread rooted itself in her bones, she set the mug down, heart beating too fast, too uneven. An icy wind rattled her window panes as if echoing her unspoken fears. 15 minutes later, Logan returned, rubbing his palms together briskly. "Everything okay?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Yeah," he replied curtly, placing a quick kiss on her forehead. "Just a pain in the ass client. I have to head out for a bit, take care of some banking stuff." "Banking? On a Sunday?" "Yeah, ATM deposits, you know. End-of-year chaos." His words spilled out too quickly like batter poured into a mold without care. Emily forced a smile and nodded. Logan grabbed his keys and left without another word, his cologne lingering long after the door clicked shut. She sat in silence for nearly an hour, staring at her phone. The heating unit hummed overhead. The clock on the wall ticked each second into eternity. Finally, she stood and walked to her tiny kitchen counter, where her laptop sat unopened since the fire. She clicked it open, eyes blurry with exhaustion. An idea formed. If the insurance wouldn't come through, maybe she could start a GoFundMe. Her customers adored her. People always said Sweet Haven was the heart of 6th Street. She typed a title into the campaign draft window: "Help Rebuild Sweet Haven. My Life's Work in Flames." Her chest tightened. She deleted it. She couldn't. Not yet. A sharp buzz interrupted her spiraling thoughts. She picked up her phone expecting Logan or her mother. Instead, it was an unknown number. The message preview on the lock screen froze her veins solid. "He doesn't love you. You need to start digging if you want the truth." Her fingers fumbled opening the full message. It was from an unregistered contact. No name, no identifying icon. "He's lying to you. Look deeper before you lose more than just your bakery." Emily's breath came in ragged gasps. She reread the message 3 times as her hands shook violently. She thought about Logan's eyes darting away, the phone clutched to his chest like a guilty prayer. The banking errand on a Sunday. The insurance delay. The wedding deposits locked away in shared accounts. The room spun around her. Her knees gave out and she slid down the cabinet, phone clutched to her chest. Tears streaming hot down her frozen cheeks. Someone out there knew something. And if Logan was hiding secrets this dark, she was about to uncover truths that could burn her life down far deeper than the fire ever had. Emily didn't sleep that night. She lay on her couch beneath a quilt her grandmother had sewn decades ago, eyes open, watching headlights flash across her ceiling as dawn crept into the world. The message from the unknown number burned in her mind like a fever she couldn't sweat out. "He doesn't love you. Look deeper before you lose more than just your bakery." By 6 a.m., her chest felt caged, as if her ribs were iron bars keeping her lungs from expanding fully. The air smelled stale with burnt coffee, and tears dried into her pillow. When her phone buzzed with Logan's morning text, "Morning, Angel. Headed to work early. Love you." She didn't reply. Instead, she sat up, wiping her swollen eyes on her sleeve, and made the call she'd been avoiding since the fire. She scrolled to the contact labeled Ethan, Red Hawk Investigations. The phone rang twice before his deep, gravel-edged voice answered. "Emily," he said, as though he'd been expecting her call. "I've been meaning to reach out. I saw the news about Sweet Haven. I'm so sorry." His voice was quiet but threaded with something strong, an undercurrent of steel beneath sorrow. She swallowed hard, fighting tears. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice hoarse from crying all night. Can I come by your office this morning? I need help, and I don't know who else to trust." "Of course." He didn't even hesitate. "I'm here until noon before a court appointment. Come whenever you're ready." She ended the call and went to the bathroom mirror. Her reflection startled her. Red-rimmed eyes and a pale, hollow face framed by tangled hair she hadn't brushed in 2 days. She splashed water on her skin, tied her curls back into a low knot, and slipped on jeans and a black hoodie, clothes she hadn't worn since college. For once, she didn't care how she looked to the world. The December wind knifed through her thin sweatshirt. As she hurried from her car to Ethan's office on Congress Avenue, the Red Hawk investigation sign was small and discreet beside a dusty bookstore, its windows glowing with faint lamplight in the early dawn. She opened the glass door and stepped into warmth, smelling faintly of dark roast coffee and old wood polish. Ethan's office hadn't changed in the 3 years she'd known him. A mahogany desk, scarred with age, shelves lined with legal binders and digital storage drives, and a faded black leather couch facing a wide window that overlooked downtown Austin, waking up beneath violet skies. Ethan sat behind his desk, sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing muscular forearms dusted with dark hair. He'd always looked slightly out of place in her bakery with his stern features and solemn eyes, but his smile had been genuine when he ordered lemon bars after his long stakeout shifts. Now he studied her as she crossed the room, eyes scanning her trembling hands, her chapped lips, the shadows under her eyes. "Sit," he said softly, nodding to the couch. "You look like you've been through hell." She let out a broken laugh as she sank into the worn leather. "I guess I have." He moved from behind his desk, setting a mug of coffee in front of her, before taking a seat in the armchair across from her. For a moment, neither spoke. The ticking wall clock filled the silence, counting down the seconds of her ruined life. Finally, she inhaled shakily. "The fire. It wasn't an accident. I know how that sounds. Ethan, I need to know who did this. I need to know if I'm crazy or if everything I've built is really gone because of someone who wanted to hurt me." He didn't blink. His brown eyes remained steady on hers, unwavering. "Tell me everything. From the beginning." So she did. She told him about the insurance delays, about Logan's sudden evasiveness, about the text from the unknown number. Every word spilled out of her in trembling gasps until her voice turned raw. When she finished, Ethan sat back, steepling his fingers beneath his chin. For a long moment, he said nothing. She could almost see his mind working, cataloging, connecting, discarding, and pursuing invisible threads. Finally, he spoke. "You're not crazy, and you're not alone in this." Fresh tears stung her eyes. "Can you help me?" "Of course." He stood and moved behind his desk, pulling out a legal pad. "First things first, I'll pull security footage from the surrounding businesses near Sweet Haven. Do you remember exactly what time the fire alarm triggered?" 11:42 p.m., she said instantly. That moment was seared into her bones. "Good. I'll need login permissions for your bakery's internal security system as well. Even if the cameras melted, there may be cloud storage backups." He scribbled notes rapidly, his neat block letters filling line after line. "Second, we'll check nearby ATMs, street cams, and businesses with external security feeds. That stretch of 6th Street has multiple cameras within half a block." She watched him work, her heart lifting slightly with each precise motion of his pen. Ethan had always radiated quiet competence, but now she clung to it like a lifeline. "What do you need from me?" she whispered. He glanced up, his eyes dark but kind. "Nothing right now. Go home. Try to eat something. Rest if you can. I'll call you when I have something concrete." She nodded, too exhausted to argue. As she stood, Ethan reached out and touched her wrist lightly. His fingers were warm and calloused against her chilled skin. "We're going to find out the truth, Emily. Whoever did this, they're going to regret it." She swallowed past the tightness in her throat. "Thank you," she whispered. "Always," he said softly. She left his office feeling lighter than she had in days, though the gnawing dread remained lodged in her chest like a thorn. Hours later, Ethan sat in his darkened office, illuminated only by his triple monitor setup, displaying security feeds from every angle of 6th Street. fast-forwarding, rewinding, enhancing grainy night footage with practiced flicks of his stylus pen. Finally, at 2:17 p.m., he froze. The footage blurred with digital noise, but the shape was unmistakable. A tall figure in a heavy coat and jeans, head down, exiting the back alley door of Sweet Haven at 11:37 p.m., 5 minutes before the fire alert. Ethan leaned forward, his jaw tightening. The man wore a dark baseball cap pulled low over his face, but even with the fuzzy resolution, Ethan's trained eyes caught details: broad shoulders, slightly bowed left leg, a distinctive gait he recognized from dozens of bakery visits. Logan Bennett. He rewound, replayed, enhanced again. The man paused by the dumpster, tugged his hood up, and glanced over his shoulder before disappearing into the shadows. Ethan's gut twisted with cold fury. He grabbed his phone and dialed Emily. She answered on the first ring, breath ragged. "Emily, it's Ethan. I have something for you." Her voice trembled. "Who was it?" He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Meet me tomorrow morning. We need to talk in person. And Emily, stay close to people you trust tonight. Please." As he ended the call, Ethan's chest tightened. He'd seen betrayals before. Husbands cheating wives, siphoning secret funds, business partners forging signatures. But something about the devastation in Emily's eyes haunted him in a way he hadn't felt in years. He swiveled back to the footage, freezing the blurred image of Logan leaving Sweet Haven moments before flames consumed her dreams. Whoever burned her life down had no idea what storm they had just unleashed. Emily sat in Ethan's dimly lit office the next morning, staring at the paused security footage on his center screen. Her fingers dug into the corduroy cushion of the guest chair. Her breath came shallow, chest tightening so hard it felt like her ribs were folding inward. On the screen, the grainy figure moved across the alley behind Sweet Haven. The footage was black and white, slightly distorted from rain smears on the camera lens, but to Emily it may as well have been a crystal-clear confession. She would know that walk anywhere, that slightly forward hunch of his shoulders, as if he was bracing against an imaginary wind. The confident but quiet steps of a man used to drawing attention without seeking it. The same gait she'd watched 100 times from behind her bakery counter, smiling at his arrival, feeling her pulse quicken every time he reached across to brush flour from her cheek. Her stomach twisted with nausea. She covered her mouth with her trembling hands and forced herself to speak. "That's Logan," she whispered, her voice raw and ragged, each syllable scraping her throat like broken glass. "That's him. Oh God, that's him." Ethan nodded grimly, his eyes flicking between her devastated face and the frozen image on the screen. He'd seen this moment before with other clients, that instant when love calcified into betrayal, when hope curdled into heartbreak. "I'm so sorry, Emily," he said quietly. A sob rose in her chest, but she swallowed it down, pressing her nails so hard into her palms she felt skin break. Her thoughts raced in fractured flashes, Logan helping her frost Christmas cupcakes just days before, Logan pressing kisses to her temple as they fell asleep, Logan promising to build a future together, and Logan setting her world on fire with his own hands. How could he? Her voice faded to nothing as her vision blurred with tears. Ethan gently reached out and rested a solid grounding hand on her forearm. "Listen to me. You need to stay calm. Go home today. Do not confront him alone. Let me—" But Emily was already shaking her head, wiping tears from her cheeks with a fierce swipe. "No," she said, her voice shaking, but hardening with each word. "No, I have to hear him say it. Emily, I have to know why." She stood abruptly, the chair scraping back with a harsh screech against the hardwood floor. Ethan rose too, towering over her, but she barely registered him. "Please," she whispered, eyes glassy with pain. "I need to do this." He held her gaze for a long moment, jaw clenched, then finally nodded once slowly. "Call me if you need backup." I mean it. She didn't respond. She grabbed her coat from the hook by his door and fled down the stairs into the frigid Austin morning, her boots slapping the icy pavement with every ragged breath she took. Logan's apartment was in a modern complex overlooking Lady Bird Lake. Sunlight glinted off the water, mocking her with its cheerful sparkle. Her knuckles burned as she pounded on his door, each slam echoing down the silent hallway. She could taste copper at the back of her throat from holding back screams. Finally, the door swung open. Logan stood there wearing navy joggers and no shirt hair damp from the shower skin flushed pink. He smiled sleepily until he saw her face. He asked, brow furrowing. "What's wrong? What happened?" She pushed past him without a word, storming into the immaculate white and steel living room that once felt like a second home. Her fists clenched so tight her nails bit half-moons into her palms. Why, she choked out, spinning to face him as he closed the door slowly behind them. Why Logan? He blinked, confusion clouding his eyes. "Why what, baby, I don't." "Don't!" She screamed, her voice cracking, vibrating in her chest like a snapped violin string. "Don't call me that. Don't lie to me. I saw the footage, Logan. You were there. You were at Sweet Haven that night." His jaw twitched. For a moment, silence stretched between them like a guillotine blade suspended mid-air. Then he exhaled slowly, shoulders slumping as though he'd been carrying a weight too heavy to pretend any longer. "Emily," he said softly, his voice dripping pity and regret in equal measure. "Emily, baby, you weren't supposed to know." Her knees threatened to buckle. She backed into his kitchen counter for support, gripping the edge so hard her knuckles blanched. Why, she whispered again, tears spilling down her cheeks, unchecked now. "Why would you do that to me? To us? To everything I've built?" Logan ran a hand through his hair, pacing across the marble floor. His bare feet slapped softly against the tile. When he spoke again, his words came out in a desperate rush. "I didn't mean for it to happen this way. I thought it would fix everything, Em. My debt's your insurance payout. It was a win-win. You get your bakery money. I pay off the loans. We get married and start over." She stared at him, mouth open in silent horror. The words didn't fit together. They refused to make sense no matter how many times she replayed them in her mind. "You burned down my life. For money?" she asked faintly. He flinched. "I didn't want to hurt you. I swear to God, Emily. I did it for us. I did it so we could have a future. I can fix this. Okay, I'll take care of everything. I'll marry you. We'll move away and you can open a new bakery somewhere else. Somewhere nicer. I promise, baby." He reached for her hand. She jerked it away like he'd burned her skin. "You think this is about the bakery?" She spat, voice rising with each syllable until it fractured into a scream. "You think I care about bricks and ovens and shelves? You burned down my dreams. You burned down everything I believed about you, about love, about who I thought you were." He shook his head rapidly, tears gathering in his own eyes now. "Emily, listen to me, please. I was desperate. The debt collectors, they threatened to break my legs to ruin me. I was drowning. I thought if I handled it myself, you'd never have to know." Her laughter came out like a broken sob, harsh and hollow in the pristine silence of his kitchen. "Handled it yourself, by destroying everything I am. That's not love, Logan. That's cowardice." He stepped closer, palms out in supplication, eyes glistening. "Please, baby. If you say anything, I'll go to prison. And then what happens to us? To our wedding? To everything we planned?" She froze. The words sliced through her haze of grief, leaving cold clarity in their wake. Us. Wedding. Plans. All of it built on lies. On ruin. "There is no us," she said quietly, her voice shaking but clear as crystal. "There is no wedding. There is nothing left here for me." She stepped back, ripping the engagement ring off her finger so forcefully it scraped skin. She pressed it into his chest so hard he gasped before letting it clatter to the marble floor between them. "Get out," she whispered. He blinked. "Emily, this is my—" "Get out!" she screamed, the sound ripping up from her gut like a banshee's wail. For a moment he just stood there staring at her with wide, wounded eyes, chest heaving with panicked breaths. Then slowly his gaze hardened into something flinty and cold. He snatched his keys from the counter and walked past her shoulder, brushing hers with a deliberate shove as he left. The door slammed shut behind him. The sound reverberated through her bones, leaving silence in its wake so thick she felt like she was suffocating. She collapsed to the kitchen floor, sobs racking her body in violent waves. Her palms pressed flat against the cold tiles as if she could hold herself together with sheer force of will. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Hands trembling, she pulled it out. "Ethan, is he gone?" She swallowed back her tears, typing back with shaking fingers. "Yes, he's gone, but Ethan—" She paused, staring out the window at the Austin skyline shimmering under pale winter sunlight. "Something tells me he wasn't working alone." The morning after Logan left, Emily sat in Ethan's office numb. The cheap coffee in the paper cup before her had gone cold untouched. Outside, the Austin skyline glowed with early sun, but inside she felt only frost, a numbness so profound her breath came in quiet, automatic gasps, just enough to keep her alive. Ethan sat across from her, sleeves rolled up, tapping rapidly on his laptop keyboard. His brow was furrowed in concentration, eyes darting between code lines and digital banking windows. She watched his fingers move, feeling a distant echo of gratitude for his presence, for the fact that someone in this world was still fighting for her. Finally, he spoke, voice low and tight. "I've been digging into Logan's financials since you left last night. He's not just in debt, Emily. He's buried." She blinked, eyes gritty from unshed tears. How bad? 3 separate lines of credit defaulted. He owes over $200,000 in gambling markers to a private lender in Vegas. That's the kind of debt that doesn't just disappear. Ethan exhaled sharply, rubbing his jaw. "But there's something else. Something that doesn't fit." He turned the laptop so she could see the screen. Her eyes flicked over the transaction history, endless negative balances and flagged charges, until they landed on a highlighted row. Her breath caught. A deposit, $50,000. She squinted, leaning forward, heart pounding. Where did that come from? Ethan's eyes locked onto hers, dark and burning. It came from Madison. For a moment, Emily didn't understand the words. They hovered in the air between them, incomprehensible syllables, strung together with no meaning. Madison. Her little sister Madison, with her perfect French manicures and her breezy social media influencer life. Madison, who used to follow her around the kitchen as a child, tugging at her apron strings, begging to lick the icing bowl. "No," she whispered, voice breaking. "No, Ethan. That's not possible. Madison doesn't even like Logan. She thinks she called him a golden retriever in loafers. She wouldn't—" "Emily." Ethan cut in gently but firmly. "I traced the payment. It came from one of her business accounts. It was transferred into a holding company Logan uses as a front for his gambling debt repayments." Emily shook her head rapidly, tears blurring her vision. "No, there must be some mistake. Maybe she was paying him back for something. Maybe he was helping her with taxes or investments or—" Ethan's gaze softened, but his jaw remained set. "Emily, I'm sorry. But this isn't an accident. People don't just hand over 50 grand to their sister's fiancé without a reason." She pressed trembling hands to her mouth, trying to quiet the sob building in her chest. Her heart thundered so violently it felt like it might burst open, spilling all her worst fears onto the floor. Why she gasped the word tearing out of her throat. Why would she do this? Ethan didn't answer. He simply reached over and gently squeezed her wrist, grounding her in the moment, keeping her from spiraling completely. "Let me show you something else," he said quietly. He clicked another tab open. Security footage. This time from outside a luxury cafe in West Austin. Emily frowned confused until Ethan fast-forwarded the footage to a timestamp 3 weeks before the fire. The footage showed Madison sitting at a patio table in a cream wool coat, oversized sunglasses perched atop her perfectly highlighted hair. Across from her sat Logan, his posture stiff, his hands clasped tightly together on the table. Emily's vision tunneled. She watched as Madison leaned forward, speaking quickly, her manicured finger jabbing the air for emphasis. Logan rubbed his face with both palms, then nodded slowly, defeated. Madison reached into her Prada tote and pulled out a slim black checkbook, scribbled. Something tore out the check and slid it across the table. Logan hesitated. Madison spoke again, slower this time. Her mouth curved into a smile that made Emily's stomach lurch. Logan finally picked up the check and tucked it into his coat pocket. Madison leaned back in her chair, satisfied, sipping her iced latte like a queen rewarding her pawn. Ethan paused the footage on Madison's face. Even with sunglasses covering her eyes, Emily saw it. The tilt of her chin, the cold curve of her lips. "This wasn't charity," Ethan said softly. "This was a transaction." Emily's mind spiraled backwards, sucked into memories that now felt sick with hidden meaning. It was October, just after their mother's funeral. The house smelled like lilies and stale tears. Emily stood at the oak kitchen table, sorting through stacks of legal documents, while Madison scrolled absently through her phone, perfectly manicured nails tapping glass in rhythmic annoyance. "Why are you even bothering with all this paperwork today?" Madison asked sharply, her voice echoing across the silent kitchen. "Mom's not even buried 48 hours and you're already acting like the house is yours." Emily paused, swallowing down her grief. "I'm not acting like anything. I'm following her will. She left the house to me, Mads. You know that." Madison snorted, setting down her phone with a dramatic clatter. "Yeah, because she always thought you were Little Miss Perfect. Emily the Baker Queen. Emily the selfless daughter. Emily who gave up New York to come home and take care of her." "I didn't give up New York for her." Emily snapped, tears stinging her eyes. "I left New York because I wanted to. I built my life here. This is my home." Madison laughed, a harsh sound that made Emily flinch. "Sure. Keep telling yourself that. Just remember one day all those sweet little cupcakes won't be enough to keep your life pretty." Emily turned away, throat tight with tears, and missed the way Madison's eyes narrowed into flat slits of cold calculation. Now, sitting in Ethan's office, those words replayed in her mind like a curse. All those small slights, the snide comments about Logan being too pretty to be useful, the dismissive hand waves whenever Emily mentioned wedding planning, it all slotted into place with horrific clarity. She felt like she couldn't breathe. Her chest caved inward, tears rolling down her cheeks in silent streams. Her sister, her own blood, her childhood best friend, the girl she braided hair with under quilt tents, the girl she stayed up with whispering secrets about dream weddings and Paris honeymoons. Ethan leaned forward, his voice gentle but urgent. "Emily, look at me." She dragged her eyes up to meet his. The dark brown depths were steady grounding her in the moment, keeping her from drowning completely. "This isn't over," he said firmly. "We're going to find out exactly what Madison's role was in this, but you need to prepare yourself. This may just be the beginning." Emily let out a ragged sob, pressing her fists against her chest as if trying to hold her fractured heart in place. The world felt like it was spinning off its axis, every pillar she'd leaned on toppling into rubble around her. Her sister and her fiancé. The two people she trusted most. The two people she loved most. The two people who had burned her life to ashes. Together. Emily sat in Ethan's office, her hands curled into white-knuckled fists on her knees, staring at a spot on the carpet where a small thread had come loose. Her breathing came in shallow, rapid bursts, as though her body was trying to outrun the reality crushing her chest. Her sister, her fiancé. Two knives driven so deep into her back she wondered if she'd ever stand up straight again. Ethan watched her from across the room, elbows propped on his desk. Eyes dark and unblinking as he processed the footage, the transactions, the connections. The silence between them was heavy with grief and rage, vibrating with unspoken vows of retribution. Finally, he leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly, fingers steepled beneath his chin. "Emily," he said quietly, his voice edged with steel. "I know you're in hell right now, but I need you to hear me." She didn't look up. Tears dripped from her lashes onto her jeans, darkening the denim in blotchy stains. "Emily," she forced her chin upward, meeting his gaze. His eyes held no pity, only cold purpose, and a flicker of something fierce and protective that sent a shiver down her spine. "You have two options," he said. "One, you let them win. You let them burn your life down, take your inheritance, take your dignity, and walk away with their heads high while you disappear. Or two," he leaned forward, his voice dropping into a low growl. "Two, you rise from the ashes. You become something so untouchable, so unbreakable, that they will spend the rest of their lives choking on your success." Her breath caught. She wanted that. God, she wanted that. But her voice trembled with doubt as she spoke. "How, Ethan," she whispered. "They burned everything. Sweet Haven is gone. My reputation. My clients think I failed them. My insurance won't even pay out fully without months of litigation. I have nothing." He shook his head. "You have me, and you have your talent. That's more than enough." She blinked at him, confused. Ethan swiveled his laptop around and opened a blank Word document, typing rapidly as he spoke, each keystroke ringing out like a hammer striking anvil. "Here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to open a new bakery under a completely different LLC and ownership structure. The name will be untraceable to you in public filings. It'll go under a shell holding company I use for sensitive clients. You'll remain the silent partner and creative director." She stared at him, chest heaving. "Why hide me?" "Because," he said, looking up, eyes blazing with cunning, "they're watching for you. Logan thinks he ruined you. Madison thinks she finally cut your wings. They need to believe you're dead in the water. Meanwhile, you'll be building something unstoppable right under their noses." He clicked to a new slide, a brand logo mock-up he'd drafted while she wept. A stylized phoenix wing spread in crimson and gold, rising from flames with a delicate piping bag in its talons. The words Phoenix Confections curled beneath it in elegant serif font. A sob choked her throat. "Phoenix," she whispered. "Exactly," he said, voice softening for the first time. "You're not Sweet Haven anymore. That part of your life is gone. They burned it down. So what do? You rise from it. You become something stronger, more dangerous, more beautiful." He reached across the table, resting his calloused hand gently over her clenched fists. "I can handle the legal setup in 48 hours. The branding, the property lease under a holding company, all of it. What I need from you," he continued, his eyes locked onto hers, "is a decision. Are you ready to burn them down the way they burned you?" For a long moment, silence throbbed between them. Her pulse roared in her ears, drowning out the hum of the radiator, the distant wail of a siren 3 blocks down the quiet murmur of Ethan's desktop computer. Then slowly, Emily uncurled her fists. Her shoulders straightened, her chin lifted. Tears still streamed down her cheeks, but her eyes gleamed with something deeper than pain now. "Resolve, I'm ready," she said, her voice trembling but strong. "They think they broke me, but they haven't seen what I become when I have nothing left to lose." Ethan's lips curved into a small, cold smile. "Good," he said, leaning back and cracking his knuckles. "Because they've underestimated you their entire lives." He turned his laptop back around, opening a new tab, typing rapid fire as he spoke. Step 1. We rebrand you completely. Phoenix Confections will operate under a stealth marketing campaign. No direct owner listed, just a silent creative director. I'll hire a PR firm to build buzz about an anonymous award-winning pastry chef returning to Austin with exclusive bookings only. Step 2. He continued, his fingers flying over the keys with mechanical precision. We lease a small boutique storefront on South Congress. High-end, modern, minimalist aesthetic. None of the country chic branding from Sweet Haven. This will scream exclusive. Only pre-order and delivery service. No walk-ins. People will kill to get on your list. Emily swallowed hard, her chest aching with hope so sharp it hurt. And step 3, Ethan paused, looking up at her with eyes dark and fierce. Step 3 is the legal retaliation. While Madison and Logan think they're dancing on your grave, we'll gather every piece of admissible evidence, financial transfers, insurance fraud implications, collusion for arson, inheritance, manipulation. I'll coordinate with my legal team to prepare civil and criminal filings simultaneously. He sat back, staring at her with grim determination. When we're done, Madison will lose her socialite reputation. Logan will lose his freedom. And you'll walk out of this with more than they ever tried to steal from you. Emily's breath shuddered out of her chest. Tears dripped onto her jeans, but she didn't wipe them away this time. She let them fall, silent testimonies to everything she'd lost and everything she was about to reclaim. She closed her eyes, inhaling deeply. The scent of stale coffee printer toner and Ethan's sandalwood cologne filled her senses. She let it ground her, let it rebuild her molecule by molecule until she felt steel replace the broken glass inside her chest. When she opened her eyes, they burned with quiet fire. "Do it," she whispered. "Whatever it takes, Ethan. Burn it all down. And from those ashes, I'll rise." He nodded once, curt and professional, his lips twitching into a brief, almost imperceptible smile of admiration. He turned back to his laptop, opening secure legal software. "Phoenix Confections is born today," he said firmly. "Now let's design the strategy that will make them regret ever underestimating Emily Parker." And as his fingers flew across the keyboard, drafting legal notices and brand registrations, Emily sat back in her chair, exhausted, but alive with a single thought that pulsed through her veins like lifeblood. They thought they burned me, but I was always fire. Emily had never built something so quickly in her life. The following week unfolded in a blur of cold January dawns and sleepless electric nights. Each morning began with black coffee in Ethan's silent office, steam curling like ghosts in the lamplight as they drafted corporate paperwork under her new LLC. Each afternoon she met contractors at the small storefront on South Congress, a minimalist glass-fronted space with whitewashed brick walls and clean steel shelving stripped of the cozy pastels of Sweet Haven. This was no longer a cupcake cottage. Phoenix Confections would be a fortress. They installed sleek chrome ovens, walk-in refrigeration lined in brushed metal, a custom espresso machine Ethan insisted on ordering from Italy. Ethan spent his nights setting up encrypted communications between her shell corporations and his private banking channels. She spent hers drafting recipes, testing new ganache blends at the silent stainless steel prep table beneath harsh fluorescent lights, her earbuds blasting Nina Simone to drown out the rage boiling in her chest. Montage flashes cut together like a silent film. Emily, rolling fondant petals under bright LED task lamps, her hands moving fast and precise tears drying into salt stains on her cheeks. Ethan pacing the floor, phone pressed to his ear, barking into the receiver. "I don't care about your fees, Calhoun. I need that trademark filed by tomorrow morning." Emily prying open a wooden shipping crate to reveal engraved rose gold cake knives and stylized phoenix confections, embossed plates running her thumb over the logo with trembling resolve. Ethan pinning blueprint sketches to the corkboard next to sticky notes scribbled with phrases like media leak, Logan scandal, pre-pitch, and Madison inheritance fraud chain. They worked in silence, occasionally punctuated by a quiet, "Pass me that whisk," or Ethan's steady grounding. "You're doing good. Stay focused." But mostly they moved like soldiers in a foxhole, each knowing the other's rhythms, fighting the same war with different weapons. Finally, on the 7th day, Ethan straightened from his laptop, rolling his tense shoulders until they cracked. Emily was piping blood orange buttercream rosettes onto tiny tasting cupcakes when he spoke. "Phase 2, he said grimly, tapping his phone screen to illuminate the contact list. "We need them off balance before the legal hammer falls." She turned, wiping sweat from her brow with the back of her wrist. "How?" He flicked his thumb across his screen and pulled up a draft article from an Austin Society gossip site. The headline burned through her chest like acid. "Breaking wedding off. Local pastry queen Emily Parker calls off engagement to Logan Bennett after shocking cheating allegations." Her breath froze. Cheating. Ethan's eyes darkened. "They burned your life down, Em. They plotted your ruin like a corporate takeover. It's time they felt what it's like to be humiliated, to have the ground ripped out from under them in public." She stared at the glowing headline, a tremor in her chest. What if people don't believe it?" "They will." His voice was quiet, but certain. "Logan's been seen out drinking every night since the fire, and Madison's been posting cryptic quotes about loyalty on Instagram. We're not inventing a character assassination. We're weaponizing their existing flaws." She inhaled shakily, her lungs burning with each breath. She thought about Madison's dismissive snarl the day she claimed the house deed. About Logan's soft lies in the kitchen calling her baby as he plotted to turn her dreams into ash. About the tiny Phoenix Confections logo now shining from her cake box's promise of rebirth and vengeance rolled into one. "Do it," she whispered. "Let the city know exactly what kind of man he is." The scandal dropped on a Thursday morning at 8:12 a.m. By 8:17 a.m., Emily's phone buzzed with a flurry of notifications. Friends sending crying face emojis, old high school acquaintances forwarding the headline with cautious, "Is this true?" notes, distant cousins flooding her DMs with breathless sympathy. By 8:19 a.m., Madison posted an Instagram story from her rose gold kitchen, staring solemnly into the camera and mouthing along to a breakup anthem. No words, no explanation. Just a 30-second glimpse of curated heartbreak with a Dior lipstick sponsorship tagged at the bottom. By 8:24 a.m., Ethan's second phase of the plan began rolling out. A dozen influencer food blogs reposted cryptic teasers about Phoenix Confections. The pastry goddess returns with vengeance and blood orange ganache. And by 8:31 a.m., Logan showed up at the South Congress build site. Emily was bent over a pastry box order list when the glass door swung open with a bang. The morning chill swept in with him, ruffling the recipe notes pinned to the corkboard wall. She looked up and her stomach dropped. He looked terrible. His hair was disheveled skin, blotchy with broken capillaries across his cheekbones, eyes red and swollen from tears or sleeplessness. She couldn't tell. His hands shook as he reached for her, voice cracking like brittle glass. "Emily, please," he gasped, stepping toward her with desperate urgency. "I didn't cheat. I swear to God, baby, I would never. She stepped back, crossing her arms over her chest to hold herself together as he reached out again, his fingers trembling with grief or fear, or both. Please, he whispered. I don't care what the papers say, I just need you. I made mistakes. Okay. Huge mistakes. But you and me, we're forever. Don't let them poison that. Her chest burned with fury so deep it felt like magma roiling beneath her ribs. She swallowed it down, meeting his gaze with steady, ice-cold eyes. Forever? She asked quietly, her voice trembling with the effort of staying calm. You set my life on fire, Logan. You destroyed my bakery. You destroyed me. He shook his head frantically, tears spilling down his face. No, I didn't. It was just a mistake. I was trying to fix things. To fix us. Please, Emily, please. We can still have our wedding. We can start over. I'll get help. Rehab, therapy, anything. Just, please don't leave me. She stared at him. The man she once planned to marry. The man she once thought would carry her dreams in his palms, like fragile spun sugar. Now all she saw was ash and ruin. Behind her, Ethan watched silently, his posture tense, ready to intervene if Logan moved closer. Finally, Emily inhaled slowly. The scent of vanilla buttercream and scorched caramel filled her lungs. She let it ground her, fortify her. There is no us. Logan, she said quietly, each word slicing him open like a whetted blade. And there never will be again. He fell to his knees, sobbing into his trembling hands, broken and desperate. The sight brought her no joy, only a hollow emptiness where love used to bloom. Ethan stepped forward and placed a firm hand on Logan's shoulder, his grip strong and final. That's enough, he said softly but firmly. You need to leave. Logan looked up at Emily with red-rimmed eyes, chest heaving with broken sobs. Please, he whispered. She didn't respond. She simply turned away, picking up her piping bag to finish the rosettes she'd started before he arrived. Outside, the sun rose over South Congress, illuminating the Phoenix Confections logo on the window in soft gold light. And behind her, as Logan stumbled out into the cold January dawn, Ethan watched her shoulders straighten with quiet, devastating strength. The rebirth had begun. Madison strode through the revolving glass doors of McKinley & Ross Real Estate like a queen arriving at her coronation. Her cream wool coat draped perfectly across her shoulders, framing her slim figure in tailored perfection. Her heels clicked against the polished marble floor with precise rhythm, each step echoing her certainty that the world bent to her will. She smiled coolly at the junior broker who rushed to greet her. Miss Parker, we've been expecting you, he said breathlessly, guiding her past cubicles into the private conference room at the end of the hall. Its panoramic window overlooked downtown Austin, the skyline glowing beneath the winter sun. Madison set her Saint Laurent tote carefully on the oak table before settling into the leather chair. She folded her manicured hands atop a slim binder embossed with gold letters, Property Acquisition Sweet Haven Bakery. The junior broker fumbled nervously with his tablet, swiping to pull up documents. As discussed, the prior owner is under insurance litigation, but the holding company is willing to divest. You'll own the full property and remaining brand trademarks. Madison's lips curved upward in a victorious smirk. Perfect, she purred. Transfer the payment today. Use the Parker Family Trust wire route. I want the deed finalized before Monday. She didn't care about the bakery's ruined ovens or soot-caked walls. What mattered was the land, the brand name, and above all, the final erasure of her sister's pathetic dreams. Soon Sweet Haven would reopen under her management as Madison Parker Patisserie, elevated, refined, and no longer tethered to Emily's embarrassingly homemade image. She imagined Emily's devastated tears upon reading the announcement. The mere thought made her pulse quicken with savage pleasure. Back in Ethan's office 2 miles across town, the mood was darker, but not with despair. Ethan sat behind his desk, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with tension as he skimmed the transactional updates streaming across his triple-monitor setup. His jaw tightened, a vein pulsing in his temple as he read each line. Emily paced back and forth behind him, her ballet flats whispering across the carpet. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun, stray wisps curling against her flushed cheeks, but her eyes were bright with anticipation, an ember of vengeance glowing steady and controlled. Finally, Ethan leaned back, rubbing his mouth with a quiet laugh, not of amusement but of cold, savage satisfaction. "She did it," he said. "She wired the entire purchase price this morning. 52,000 for a worthless husk of burned drywall and charred copper." He turned to face Emily, his dark eyes glittering with lethal humor. "She thinks she bought a trophy. In reality, she just bought a condemned shell with pending EPA fines and unrecoverable structural damage. She has no idea it was transferred out of her reach months ago. Legally, Madison Parker now owns nothing." Emily stopped pacing. The tension in her chest loosened, replaced by a fierce, dizzying rush of triumph that left her almost breathless. "She really thought she could erase me," she whispered, half in wonder, half in disgust. "First the fire, then buying Sweet Haven out from under me. All to prove she's better. All to prove Mom was wrong to choose me." Ethan's smile didn't reach his eyes. "The best part is when the city issues their safety condemnation order next week, she'll owe remediation fees just to bulldoze it." Emily's breath hitched in a tiny, incredulous laugh. "She'll spend more tearing it down than buying it." "Exactly," Ethan said, his voice soft but razor-sharp. "She thinks she's a wolf, Em. But you're the wildfire, and wildfire doesn't bow to wolves." Silence fell between them. Emily stared out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the cityscape beyond her reflection, ghosted faintly against the glass. For the first time in weeks, her posture uncoiled from grief and rage into something stiller, deeper. Purposeful. She turned back to Ethan. "It's time, isn't it?" He nodded slowly. "It's time." She walked to the corner of his office where a plain black duffel bag sat atop a metal filing cabinet. She unzipped it with steady hands, revealing its contents. Dozens of labeled evidence folders, USB drives containing financial records, camera footage, metadata chains. Ethan had painstakingly authenticated and notarized. A slim leather case housing the hidden camera button she'd wear for her final confrontation. She reached in and ran her fingertips over the folders, feeling their embossed legal seals. Each one was heavy with truth. Each one was a blade forged from every betrayal she'd endured. "Tomorrow," she said quietly, closing the duffel with finality. "Tomorrow they learn what it feels like to burn." Ethan stood crossing the room in 2 long strides to stand before her. He reached out, tucking a stray curl behind her ear with surprising gentleness. His touch was grounding, electric, and fleeting all at once. "You're sure you want to do this?" he asked, voice low. "Once you cross this line, there's no going back. No fixing the family dinners. No pretending it never happened." Emily held his gaze, seeing her reflection in the depths of his dark eyes. The woman she was now forged in ash and silence and heat. She smiled a small, sad smile, edged with defiance. "There is no family left to fix." She slung the duffel over her shoulder, its weight grounding her in the present. She straightened her posture, rolling her shoulders back, her chin lifting with quiet, regal finality. "I'm going to bury them, Ethan," she said softly, her voice steel wrapped in velvet. "And then I'm going to rise above their graves." Ethan nodded, once his expression grim but proud. "Then let's prepare your battlefield." And as the winter sun set over Austin, bleeding gold and crimson across the glass walls of Ethan's office, Emily Parker walked out into the falling darkness, her shadow stretching long behind her. A phoenix reborn, wings dipped in flame, carrying her final weapon, the truth. Emily stood at the long stainless steel prep table in the quiet dawn, her fingers tracing the embossed gold lettering on the heavy cream envelope before her. Outside the bakery's glass windows, Austin was just beginning to stir. Delivery trucks rumbling down South Congress, early commuters sipping burnt gas station coffee under the lilac pre-sunrise sky. She inhaled slowly, savoring the bittersweet scent of espresso and orange blossom ganache lingering in the air. Then, with precise movements, she sealed the final envelope, pressing the gold Phoenix Confections wax stamp into its closing fold. The stylized Phoenix emblem gleamed under the pendant lights. Wings spread wide, a piping bag clutched in its talons reborn in flames. 2 names were written in Ethan's looping, lawyer-sharp hand: Madison Parker, Logan Bennett. Emily set the envelope aside and lifted her phone. Her thumb hovered over the contact list for half a second before she tapped send on the scheduled courier order. Within minutes, a sleek black town car pulled up outside the bakery. A suited driver stepped inside, collected the envelopes from Ethan with a curt nod, and disappeared back into the dawn. Emily watched the car pull away, her heart thudding slow and heavy in her chest. She felt no triumph in the moment, only a deep humming certainty that what came next was unavoidable. Beside her, Ethan sipped his coffee, eyes trained on her profile. "You're sure about this?" he asked quietly. She turned to him, her gaze clear and unflinching. "They burned me down, Ethan. Now I'm inviting them to watch me rise." Madison received her envelope while sitting in the glass-walled conference room of her publicist's office, mid-photo shoot for a sponsored skincare line. She tore it open distractedly, smirking at the elegant calligraphy and minimal black and gold design. Phoenix Confections. Grand opening, she read aloud with a snort. "Oh, isn't that precious? Like a cockroach refusing to die." Her assistant glanced up nervously. "Are you going to go?" Madison flicked her wrist, dismissively flipping to the next page of the shoot's storyboard. "Of course I'll go. Someone has to teach dear Emily what happens when you try to crawl back up after you've been stomped down. I want her to see what success actually looks like." She tossed the envelope aside, its wax seal cracking against the table as she refocused on the camera lens. "Let's move on. I want the Dior reels done before noon." Logan received his invitation on his doorstep, delivered by private courier just after sunrise. He opened it with trembling hands, the embossed gold logo blurring through his tear-swollen vision. His chest tightened with panic as he read the elegant script. "Phoenix Confections invites you to an exclusive grand opening celebration." He crumpled the envelope in his fist, anger and desperation burning hot under his skin. "Emily," he whispered to the empty hallway. "What are you doing?" The day of the opening dawned cold and bright. Austin glittered under a hard blue sky, the city humming with weekend energy as Phoenix Confections prepared to unveil itself to the public. Inside the bakery, the minimalist interior gleamed under pristine white pendant lamps. Chrome display cases were lined with jewel-toned pastries, black currant mousse domes glazed to mirror perfection, pistachio rose tartlets topped with spun sugar nests, salted caramel choux, puffs piped with delicate gold leaf flourishes. Emily stood behind the marble counter dressed in tailored black slacks and a crisp white chef's coat embroidered with her new logo. Her hair was swept into a severe low bun, her makeup clean and understated, revealing the fierce lines of her jaw and the dark intelligence burning in her eyes. Ethan moved quietly through the space, adjusting ceiling-mounted cameras and double-checking streaming feeds on his laptop. Each device was wired to a private server farm downtown, encrypted with military-grade security protocols he'd implemented overnight. He glanced up from his checklist. Audio feed clear, cameras live. We're streaming directly to the press holding server and backup cloud storage. Emily didn't look away from her display arrangement as she spoke. Make sure it auto-disseminates to every major Austin media outlet the moment I give the signal. Already coded in, Ethan said, his tone calm and clinical. When this is over, everyone from KVUE to Texas Monthly will have the footage in full HD. He paused, watching her adjust the gold leaf placement on a black sesame macaron with trembling precision. "They're coming," he said softly. "I know," she whispered back. At exactly 10:04 a.m., the bakery doors swung open with a muted chime. Madison entered first, her towering Louboutin stilettos clacking sharply against the polished concrete floor. She wore a tailored white boucle blazer dress, cinched with a gold chain belt, her honey blonde hair cascading in immaculate curls. Behind her trailed Logan, his suit rumpled, his eyes shadowed with sleepless desperation. Madison paused just inside the entrance, surveying the bakery with narrowed eyes and a smirk curling her crimson lips. "Well," she drawled, her voice ringing bright and brittle in the silent space. "Look at this. Our little Emily playing bakery Barbie again. Did you max out another loan for this, or are you just squatting here until the landlord notices?" Emily turned to face her sister, expression calm, eyes bright with a cold light that made Madison's smirk falter for half a second before she recovered. "Welcome to Phoenix Confections," Emily said, her voice steady and crisp as freshly whipped meringue. "Thank you for coming." Madison laughed, tossing her hair back with practiced disdain. "Oh, please don't flatter yourself. I came because I needed a morning laugh. What is this, your sad little attempt at a comeback? You're not a phoenix, Emily. You're a moth, and you're about to burn yourself alive." Emily didn't react. She simply tilted her chin slightly, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. A smile that was neither warm nor amused. Madison frowned, unnerved. "What are you smiling at?" But Emily didn't answer. Instead, she turned to Ethan, who stood near the back counter watching the confrontation with cool, detached focus. "Are we, Liv?" Emily asked quietly. Ethan nodded, once his lips curving into a thin, predatory smile. "Live in recording," he replied softly. "Let the world see." And as Madison glanced around in confusion, her eyes catching on the tiny matte black camera lenses embedded in ceiling fixtures and pastry displays, realization began to dawn, creeping cold and relentless. But by then it was too late. The battlefield was set, the weapons were primed, and Phoenix Confections was about to deliver its first devastating, world-shattering course. The grand opening of Phoenix Confections was everything Emily had dreamed, and everything Madison had feared. By 6:45 p.m., the bakery was packed wall to wall with guests. Elegant women in silk dresses held champagne flutes with manicured fingers, while Austin's top food bloggers live-streamed every glittering tray of macarons and sculpted mousse towers to thousands of hungry followers. Ambient jazz swelled from hidden speakers, weaving seamlessly into the low hum of laughter and conversation. Golden pendant lights cast warm halos across the minimalist interior, illuminating chrome and marble, reflecting off glass pastry cases lined with edible masterpieces. Black sesame choux buns, piped with yuzu cream, sat beside blood orange ganache domes, topped with candied peel curls. Pistachio tartlets gleamed under brushstrokes of edible bronze dust. The bakery smelled like burnt sugar, citrus zest, and fresh yeast, an intoxicating promise of rebirth. Behind the espresso counter, Ethan surveyed the crowd, checking camera feeds on his phone between greeting influential guests with clipped lawyerly courtesy. Every lens captured Madison and Logan the moment they stepped through the wide glass doors at precisely 7:02 p.m. They hadn't intended to arrive together, but traffic on South Congress had forced them to share a valet line. Now they stood side by side at the bakery's threshold, each cloaked in their own calculated confidence. Logan adjusted his navy suit jacket, pulling at the lapels with a hand that trembled just slightly. He scanned the room with darting, restless eyes, seeking out Emily with a desperation he failed to mask. Beside him, Madison took in the bakery's refined decor with a dismissive flick of her gaze. Her ivory crepe meaty dress clung to her slender frame, her diamond earrings catching the warm pendant lights as she tilted her chin, lips curling into a predatory smirk. "Well," she murmured, her voice dripping with poisoned honey, Looks like our little phoenix found herself a donor. This place screams bankruptcy within 6 months. Logan didn't respond. His attention was locked on the woman standing at the far end of the bakery, greeting guests with polite nods, her expression composed and cool. Emily. She wore a minimalist black cocktail dress, the neckline severe, exposing the elegant lines of her collarbones and the rise of her shoulders. Her hair was swept back into a sleek knot, emphasizing the quiet power of her posture. She looked every inch the culinary queen, but her eyes, dark and unflinching, revealed the wildfire coiled beneath. As Logan stared at her, his chest tightened painfully with longing regret and something darker fear. At precisely 7:15 p.m., Ethan gave the signal. Emily stepped up onto the small black stage platform, set between two towering floral arrangements of blood-red peonies and ivory garden roses. A single spotlight snapped on, illuminating her silhouette in stark chiaroscuro against the bakery's matte black wall. The room fell silent. Champagne flutes paused mid-sip, conversations dying mid-sentence as all eyes turned to her. Emily gripped the edges of the sleek acrylic podium. For a moment, her pulse thundered so loudly she could hear nothing else. Then she inhaled tasting orange zest and icing sugar on her tongue, grounding herself in the sense of the life she'd rebuilt with her own 2 hands. "Good evening," she began, her voice ringing out clear and unwavering. "Thank you all for being here tonight to witness the rebirth of something I once thought I'd lost forever." She paused, letting her gaze sweep across the crowd. She saw food critics, local politicians, pastry bloggers, and wedding planners, all clustered in hushed fascination. And she saw Madison near the espresso counter, arms crossed defiantly over her chest, and Logan standing half a step behind her, his face pale and drawn. "This bakery is called Phoenix Confections for a reason," Emily continued, her voice steady as tempered chocolate. "Because it was born from ashes," the guests murmured softly, leaning closer. "2 months ago, my previous bakery burned down in a tragic fire. I lost everything I'd built over 7 years. My ovens, my recipes, my reputation, my future." She paused again, feeling her voice catch in her throat. She let the emotion fill her chest, let it thrum through every cell of her body, but her eyes remained dry and fierce. "And just when I thought I couldn't lose anything more," she said, her tone dropping into something lower, colder, "I learned the fire wasn't an accident." A ripple spread through the room, an audible shift of shock and fascination. Ethan flicked his gaze to the camera feeds, watching view counts spike on every live stream platform. Journalists leaned forward, phones raised to capture every word. Emily continued, her gaze locked onto Madison's face. It was set by someone I loved. Someone I trusted with my future, my dreams, and my heart. My fiancé. Logan flinched as if slapped, his mouth falling open. His eyes darted across the silent room, seeing dozens of smartphones recording his crumpling composure. Emily didn't stop. She couldn't, not now. "But the betrayal didn't end there," she said, her voice tightening with restrained fury. "Because he didn't act alone. He was helped, funded, manipulated, by someone even closer to me." Madison's smirk faltered. For a split second, her pupils dilated in visible panic before her mask snapped back into place. "My own sister." The bakery erupted in hushed gasps, like the crackle of a flame catching dry kindling. The sound rolled through the room as heads turned to Madison, her name hissing across manicured lips like a curse. Emily's gaze bore into Madison's widening eyes. "She funded the destruction of my business to steal what she could never build: my mother's house, my legacy, my life." Madison swallowed hard, her throat bobbing against the diamond choker encircling her pale neck. Her lips parted, but no words came out. For the first time in her life, she looked small, but Emily wasn't done. "This bakery," she said, gesturing around her, her voice rising with righteous, devastating force. is proof that you can burn me down, but you will never bury me." Her eyes swept across the crowd once more before returning to Madison and Logan standing exposed under the glare of dozens of camera phones bathed in the bright, unflinching glow of her truth. "I am Emily Parker," she said, her voice trembling with emotion but unbreakable with resolve. "And from these ashes I rise." The room erupted in applause so loud it rattled the pastry cases. Ethan watched from the espresso counter, his chest swelling with quiet pride as he captured Madison's ashen face on his hidden camera feed. Logan looked ready to collapse, sweat beading along his hairline, his lips trembling with silent pleas. Madison stood frozen, her spine ramrod straight, her knuckles bone white around her designer clutch. But despite the tremor in her chin, her eyes still burned with stubborn hatred. Emily saw it all, the rage, the humiliation, the flicker of fear, and she let it settle into her bones like the final note of a requiem, because this was only the beginning. Emily's words still echoed through Phoenix Confections when a ripple of motion cut across the crowd. Ethan stepped forward from the espresso bar, his black suit sharp under pendant lights, and handed Emily a small matte black USB drive. Its surface gleamed under the camera flashes, now strobing like lightning across the room. She turned back to the hushed audience, the USB pinched between her thumb and forefinger like a blade. "There's something else," she said, her voice calm and low, vibrating with an undercurrent of cold, lethal finality. "Something you all deserve to hear." Madison inhaled sharply. Logan shifted his weight back and forth, hands clenching at his sides, sweat beading along his temple as his eyes darted to the exits. Emily didn't look at either of them as she walked to the media projector Ethan had set up along the bakery's back wall. She slid the USB into the port, her movements precise and deliberate. The massive flat screen flickered once before coming alive with the grainy grayscale of hidden camera footage. The crowd held its breath. The audio crackled to life first, tinny and harsh but unmistakable. "It has to be tonight. Christmas Eve is perfect. No one will suspect a thing." Madison's voice, cool and clipped, rang out through the bakery like a death sentence. On screen, the footage showed Logan sitting slumped at her marble kitchen island, his head buried in his hands, hair falling across his defeated face. "I don't know, Mads. What if she finds out? What if she won't?" Madison snapped. The footage showed her pacing back and forth across her pristine kitchen tiles, her silk robe whispering against her thighs. "You disable the alarms. The wiring's faulty anyway. She's been complaining about it for months. Set a small fire in the storage pantry. Grab the insurance policy binder from her desk on your way out. By the time it's over, she'll be too devastated to fight back." The room fell so silent the only sounds were the whir of the espresso grinder behind the counter and Logan's ragged breathing on screen. "But what if she loses everything?" Logan asked, his voice breaking. "That's the point." Madison snapped her lips, curling into a feral snarl. "I'm done playing second to her, Logan. She got Mom's house, she got the bakery, she got everything. It's my turn now. And you owe me." On screen, Logan buried his face deeper into his hands, his shoulders shaking with silent, hopeless tears. Madison reached down and grabbed his chin, forcing his gaze up to hers. "Don't go soft on me now," she hissed. "You've already taken the money. Do your part. Burn it down." The footage froze on Madison's face, her eyes blazing with cold triumph, her perfectly painted lips twisted into a sneer. A stunned hush rippled through the bakery. Then slowly the silence fractured into harsh whispers as guests turned to stare at Madison and Logan, their expressions morphing from shock to revulsion in a single seamless wave. Madison's lips parted soundlessly, her chest heaving as she glanced around in panic at the dozens of phones pointed at her like loaded guns. Her gaze snapped to Emily, hatred and terror battling across her face. You can't use that!" she stammered, her voice shrill with desperation. "That's illegal surveillance. It's entrapment. It's—" But she was cut off by the sudden commotion near the bakery entrance. Two uniformed Austin PD officers stepped into the golden-lit space, their black boots silent against the concrete floor. Between them walked Detective Harris, her gray suit pressed to razor edges, her badge gleaming under pendant lights. She stopped at the edge of the silent crowd, her gaze sweeping over the guests, before settling on Madison and Logan with cold, implacable finality. "Madison Parker. Logan Bennett," she said, her voice ringing clear across the bakery. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit arson, insurance fraud, and destruction of property." The room erupted into shocked gasps, camera flashes strobing across Logan's pale, sweat-slicked face as he stumbled backwards, his lips trembling. Madison let out a high, incredulous laugh. "You can't arrest me here. This is a private event. But Detective Harris cut her off with a flat, bored look. "Turn around. Hands behind your back." Logan let out a broken sob as an officer stepped forward and gripped his wrists, pulling them roughly behind his back. The cold click of handcuffs echoed off bakery walls still scented with buttercream and scorched sugar. Madison tried to step away, but the second officer seized her arm with quiet efficiency, twisting it behind her back and locking the cuffs in place. Her diamonds glittered under pendant lights, her hair falling forward as her chin dropped in silent surrender. The guests parted in stunned silence as the officers marched Logan and Madison through the bakery. Phones recorded every humiliating step. A food blogger sobbed quietly into her latte mascara streaking down her cheeks. A middle-aged wedding planner whispered, "God, I ordered my daughter's graduation cake from her," to no one in particular. Emily stood at the edge of the bakery's black tile stage, watching as her sister and former fiancé were led past her, their cuffed wrists locked in steel, their eyes avoiding hers. Logan passed first, his chest heaving with silent sobs, tears streaming down his ashen face. His gaze flicked to hers for a fleeting second, dark with remorse, grief, and bottomless regret. She felt nothing. Then Madison was beside her. Her heels scuffed against the polished concrete floor. Her perfect posture crumpled under the heavy grip of the officer guiding her forward. For a fleeting moment her gaze locked with Emily's, wide, wild, glassy, with unshed tears and savage hatred. Emily met her eyes calmly. She felt neither triumph nor pity, only the quiet certainty of justice done. Madison tried to speak, her lips trembling around silent words, curses or pleas or desperate lies Emily would never know. And then they were gone, their figures disappearing into the golden glow of pendant lights and the storm of camera flashes. Behind them, the guests began to murmur low and fierce and unanimous. "Monsters. Disgusting. How could her own sister?" Ethan stepped forward and stood beside Emily in the silence that followed. He didn't touch her, but his quiet presence radiated warmth and certainty like a lighthouse in the storm. Emily watched the bakery doors close behind the arrested figures. Outside, the January night pressed against the glass, clear and cold under the violet Texas sky. For the first time in months, she exhaled fully, her lungs expanding without pain, her shoulders sinking down from her ears. Ethan turned to her, his dark eyes fierce and proud. "It's over," he said softly. But Emily shook her head, a small, sad smile curving her lips. "No," she whispered. "It's only just begun." Winter melted into early spring, but for Logan Bennett there would be no renewal. On a damp March morning, under a slate-gray sky swollen with rain, he stood shackled between two sheriff's deputies in courtroom 3B of the Travis County Courthouse. His once expensive suit hung loose on his thin frame, his cheeks, hollowed eyes sunken with weeks of sleepless nights on a metal cot. The courtroom was silent except for the slow, deliberate cadence of Judge Williams' voice. "Mr. Bennett, this court finds you guilty on all charges: arson in the first degree, attempted insurance fraud, and reckless endangerment." Logan's knees buckled, the chains binding his ankles clinking softly as he sagged against the deputies flanking him. His attorney laid a gentle hand on his trembling shoulder, but Logan didn't move. His eyes were vacant, staring at a stain on the polished oak floor, as if it contained the last vestiges of his dignity. "You set a fire that could have endangered countless lives." Judge Williams continued, her voice steady, clipped, and devoid of sympathy. "You orchestrated this crime not out of desperation to survive, but out of greed to erase your own failures. You placed innocent firefighters at risk, devastated an entire business district, and destroyed the livelihood of a woman who trusted you to protect her dreams." She paused, letting the words echo across the high-vaulted room lined with silent spectators and journalists, scribbling notes with shaking hands. "For these reasons," she said finally, "I hereby sentence you to 12 years in state prison without possibility of parole for the arson charge, plus an additional 5 years for insurance fraud to be served consecutively." The finality of her words landed like a hammer strike in Logan's chest. His lips parted soundlessly, a strangled gasp clawing up his throat. 12 years. 17 years. Numbers so large they blurred into meaninglessness. The deputies tightened their grips on his arms as Judge Williams ordered remove the prisoner. Logan was led away, his chains clinking rhythmically, echoing through the silent room, long after the door slammed shut behind him. 2 days later, it was Madison's turn to face the reckoning. She arrived at the courthouse swaddled in a charcoal cashmere coat with wide lapels, her hair pulled into a sleek, low chignon. Her makeup was flawless lips, painted in a muted rose lashes, curled and lengthened to perfection. But no contouring palette could hide the gaunt hollows beneath her cheekbones, nor could any concealer erase the bloodshot exhaustion rimmed around her blue eyes. The courtroom was packed with press and spectators, the air tense with anticipation. As Madison sat at the defense table, her manicured hands folded neatly in her lap, she maintained an air of icy composure, the same composure that had carried her through every debutante gala and charity luncheon since she was 15. But beneath the perfect posture, her heart thundered with a wild primal terror that made her stomach churn with nausea. District Attorney Alvarez stood and read the charges aloud in a calm, crisp voice that sliced through the hush. "Madison Parker, you are charged with conspiracy to commit arson, aiding and abetting insurance fraud, and reckless endangerment. How do you plead?" Her attorney, a balding man in an ill-fitting suit, cleared his throat nervously. "Your Honor, my client pleads guilty to conspiracy to commit arson in exchange for the state dropping the reckless endangerment charge." A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Madison's father, sitting on the front bench beside her mother, buried his face in his hands. Her mother pressed trembling fingers to her lips, her eyes wide and brimming with tears. Madison's lips trembled, but she kept her chin lifted, refusing to meet her parents' shattered gazes. The plea had been her attorney's idea, an attempt to salvage a sliver of her future from the blazing wreckage of her life. Judge Williams's eyes were sharp and cold as winter rain. "Miss Parker, your crime was not an impulsive act. It was premeditated, calculated, and motivated by jealousy and greed. You betrayed your own sister. You used her love, her trust, and her vulnerability as weapons against her. That level of malice is reprehensible." Madison felt her composure crack like fine porcelain under a hammer. Tears slipped silently down her cheeks, smearing her perfect makeup as she bit down hard on her trembling lip. "For these reasons," the judge said, her voice ringing with quiet finality, "I hereby sentence you to 6 years in state prison for conspiracy to commit arson and 5 years probation upon release. You will also pay full restitution to Emily Parker in the amount determined by civil court." A sob burst from Madison's throat before she could stop it. Her hands flew to her mouth as her body shook with silent, desperate weeping. As bailiffs stepped forward to cuff her wrists behind her back, she finally turned to look at her parents, but neither of them met her gaze. Her father continued to stare at the courtroom floor, shoulders hunched and trembling with suppressed grief. Her mother dabbed at her eyes with a trembling silk handkerchief, her lips pressed into a thin, bloodless line of anguish. The bailiffs guided Madison away, her heels clicking erratically across the tile floor, her silent sobs echoing off the oak-paneled walls until the heavy courtroom doors slammed shut behind her. The aftermath rippled outward, consuming every corner of the Parker family's pristine, manicured world. 2 weeks later, Emily's parents sat side by side at the breakfast table in their sprawling limestone ranch house overlooking the Austin skyline. Neither touched their steaming mugs of coffee. Her father sat slumped forward, elbows braced on his knees, staring down at the patterned rug with vacant eyes. His once silver hair was uncombed, his button-down shirt wrinkled from hours of restless, sleepless tossing. Her mother sat stiff-backed in her upholstered chair, clutching a rolled copy of the Austin Statesman in trembling hands. Across its glossy front page, the headline screamed in bold black type: Socialite Madison Parker sentenced in arson scandal. Fiancé Logan Bennett receives 17 years. Below the headline was a photograph of Madison being led away in cuffs, her mascara-smeared cheeks turned to the camera in silent despair. Emily's mother pressed her lips together to hold back a sob as tears blurred her vision. She turned to her husband, her voice breaking into a whisper. "How did we raise them like this? How did it come to this?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. His chest heaved once with a silent, ragged breath, and he closed his eyes, his hands curling into fists against his knees. Outside, the early spring sun rose over the Austin hills, bathing the Parker family home in bright, unforgiving light. The manicured lawn gleamed with morning dew, but inside everything felt brittle, broken, and irreparably stained. Neither of them could bring themselves to look out the window, not at the neighbors jogging by with tight, polite smiles, not at the mailman who paused to whisper to their gardener, not at the world beyond their oak-paneled shame. Because no matter how many foundations they donated to, no matter how many gala tables they bought out, no matter how many perfect Christmas cards they mailed each year, the truth was now carved into the bedrock of their name. Their children had burned down everything they touched, and no amount of polished silver or monogrammed linen could wash away the scent of smoke. The spring morning outside Phoenix Confections was radiant with Austin sunshine, golden beams slanting through the wide glass windows, illuminating floating dust motes like flecks of spun sugar. The bakery smelled of orange blossom brioche and freshly brewed espresso, the scent drifting softly over trays of pistachio financiers and pink peppercorn caramels. Emily stood at the long marble counter, her fingers tracing the swirl pattern in the stone as she watched a family of 4 at table 6. A little girl with curly chestnut hair bit into a lavender shortbread cookie, her smile wide and luminous crumbs dusting her pink t-shirt. Her father leaned in, brushing her cheek clean with a napkin, while her mother sipped iced latte with tired, grateful eyes. Emily's chest ached with a quiet, bittersweet warmth. This was why she'd rebuilt. This was why she'd risen from the ashes. Behind her, she heard Ethan's quiet footsteps approaching. He stopped a few feet away, silent for a long moment, before finally speaking in a voice low and slightly unsteady. "You did it," he said. "You built something beautiful out of everything they tried to destroy." She turned to him with a small smile, her eyes glowing in the morning light. He stood there in a black Henley and jeans, his hair tousled from early errands, his dark eyes holding a softness he rarely showed. "I didn't do it alone," she said gently. "You were there. Every step." He let out a quiet breath, glancing down at his shoes, then back up to meet her gaze. For a long moment, neither of them spoke the hum of the espresso machine and the low chatter of customers filling the space between their heartbeats. Finally, he stepped closer, his expression shifting from gentle support to something more vulnerable, more raw. His fingers flexed at his sides as he searched her eyes for permission for courage. "Emily." He began, his voice hoarse with emotion. "There's something I need to tell you. Something I've been holding back for too long." She tilted her head slightly, her heart stuttering in her chest. His gaze burned into hers with a fierce, quiet intensity. "I love you," he said, the words emerging like a confession ripped from his soul. "I've loved you for years. Long before Logan. Long before all of this. I watched you build Sweet Haven with nothing but flower dust and hope, and I saw how your eyes lit up every time you handed a customer something you made. I saw the way you cried alone when the city rejected your permit the first time, and the way you still smiled when you handed out leftover cupcakes to the homeless downtown at night." His voice broke, but he swallowed hard and continued stepping closer until only a breath separated them. "I never said anything because I thought you deserved someone uncomplicated. Someone who wasn't so consumed by other people's secrets and sins. But seeing what Logan did to you, what Madison did, I can't stay silent anymore." His eyes brimmed with unshed tears as he let out a trembling breath. "I love you, Emily Parker. I want to be there for you, not as your lawyer or your detective or your fixer, as your partner, your equal, your person." Emily's heart thundered in her chest, her pulse roaring in her ears. The bakery around them faded into a blur of golden light and distant sounds. All she saw was Ethan, his raw, unguarded gaze, his trembling hands, his vulnerability laid bare before her like an unwrapped gift. For a long moment, she didn't speak. She simply looked at him, searching his face for all the truths she'd never allowed herself to see before, the fierce protectiveness in his eyes, the gentleness in the curve of his lips, the unbreakable loyalty etched into every line of his posture. She reached up and placed her palm gently against his cheek. He closed his eyes at her touch, his chest shuddering with a quiet, ragged breath. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "Thank you. For everything. For standing by me when no one else did. For believing in me when I didn't believe in myself." He opened his eyes, hope flickering in their dark depths. She smiled softly, her thumb brushing along his jawline. "But I can't give you what you're asking for," she said, her voice cracking on the last word. His face felt pain flashing across his features like a fracture line in glass. Why, he asked, his voice breaking. "Is it because of Logan? Because of what happened?" She shook her head slowly, tears pooling in her eyes as her smile wavered. "No," she whispered. "It's because of me." He frowned, confusion knitting his brows. "I spent so many years pouring myself into other people," she said, her voice quiet and heavy with truth. "My parents, Madison, Logan, even this bakery. I gave and gave until there was nothing left for myself. And when it all burned down, I realized I don't know who I am without everyone else's expectations telling me." Her tears spilled over, trailing down her cheeks in silent rivers. Ethan reached up to wipe them away with trembling fingers, but she gently caught his hand in hers, holding it between their chests. "I need to find her," she whispered. "The woman I am when I'm not someone's daughter or sister or fiancé or boss. I need to find the Emily who can stand alone in her own quiet strength and not be consumed by everyone else's flames." His throat worked around a silent sob, but he nodded, tears glistening in his lashes. "I understand," he whispered hoarsely. I needed you to know, before you left." She smiled through her tears, leaning in to press her forehead against his. For a brief, aching moment, they stood there, breathing each other in, feeling the shape of what could have been. "Thank you," she whispered, "for loving me enough to let me go." He closed his eyes, tears slipping free down his cheeks as his hands tightened around hers. always, he breathed. Outside, the Austin morning blazed into full sun, the city alive with possibility and promise. Inside Phoenix Confections. Emily closed her eyes and let herself feel the soft, quiet ache of healing, the first step into the vast, unknown landscape of her own becoming. Because before she could belong to anyone, she needed to belong to herself. The morning air was crisp with spring chill as Emily pulled her old navy cardigan tighter around her shoulders. She walked up the familiar stone pathway, lined with rose bushes, now pruned for the season, each thorny branch stark and skeletal against the pale dawn. The Parker family ranch house loomed ahead, its limestone walls glowing amber in the rising sun. She paused at the bottom of the porch steps, breathing in deeply, letting the smell of lavender shrubs and morning dew settle her pounding heart. It felt like stepping into another life, a life where she used to run barefoot up these steps, cinnamon rolls clutched in sticky fingers, calling out for her mother to come taste the first batch. She climbed the porch and knocked softly. Moments later, the door swung open to reveal her father wearing his old gray cardigan and faded jeans. His silver hair was mussed at the crown eyes, bleary with sleep, but softening instantly when he saw her. "Emmy," he whispered, his voice breaking around her name like dry twigs snapping underfoot. Tears brimmed in his eyes as he pulled her into a tight, trembling embrace. She rested her cheek against his chest, closing her eyes as his familiar scent of cedarwood cologne and coffee grounds enveloped her. Her mother emerged from the kitchen behind him, wiping her hands on a striped dish towel. Her gaze caught Emily's, and for a moment the grief lines around her eyes deepened before she crossed the living room quickly and wrapped her arms around both of them. They stood like that in the golden morning silence. Father, mother, daughter bound together by shared blood, fractured loyalties and quiet battered love. Finally, Emily pulled back and reached into her coat pocket. She drew out a small brass key tied with a white satin ribbon. Her fingers trembled as she pressed it into her father's calloused palm. "This is Mom's house key," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the morning birdsong outside. "The bakery deed and the house are both in my name now. But I want you to have this. Stay there when you need. Sell it if you must. Whatever happens, it's still home for all of us." Her father stared down at the key, his tears dripping onto its tarnished surface. Her mother pressed trembling fingers to her lips, silent sobs shaking her shoulders. "Oh, Emily," she whispered, her voice cracking with grief and wonder. "After everything, how can you still be so kind?" Emily smiled softly, a sadness blooming in her chest like a bruise. "Because kindness is the only thing they couldn't burn out of me." They sat together on the living room couch for an hour, sipping black coffee and listening to the ticking grandfather clock in the hallway. No one spoke of Madison. No one spoke of Logan. Their absence filled the spaces between words like bitter perfume. Finally, Emily rose, kissed both their cheeks, and left the house without looking back. As she reached her car, she saw her father standing at the living room window, holding the brass key to his heart, his shoulders trembling with silent tears. 2 days later, as Emily locked up Phoenix Confections for the night, she noticed a letter slipped under the bakery's front door. Its paper was thin, institutional beige, with a printed address from the Travis County Correctional Facility in the corner. Her chest constricted as she bent to pick it up. She carried it to the back office, sitting at her maple desk in the quiet dark. The bakery smelled of cocoa powder and burnt caramel from the day's final batches. She tore open the envelope with steady fingers and unfolded the single page inside. The writing was rushed and slanted, each letter trembling with desperation. "Emily, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if forgiveness is real anymore. But I need you to know. I never wanted to hurt you. I wanted to matter. I was so tired of being the invisible sister, the one who didn't bake perfect cakes or inherit Mom's eyes or make everyone proud. I was drowning, and Logan, he offered me a lifeboat. I didn't realize I was helping him set it on fire. They're giving me 6 years. Maybe that's mercy. Maybe it's punishment. Maybe it's both. But every night in this place I lie awake and think about you. I see you as a little girl frosting cupcakes in your pajamas, and I wonder what kind of monster I became to want to destroy that smile. I'm sorry, Emily, for everything. Love, Madison. Emily let out a shuddering breath as tears slid silently down her cheeks, splashing onto the ink-smudged paper. The grief burned deep in her ribs, raw and hollow like a cauterized wound. For a long moment she simply sat there, staring at her sister's words, feeling the weight of every memory they had ever shared. The Christmas mornings, the shared bunk beds, the whispered secrets under blankets, the fights over makeup and hairbrushes, the tears at their mother's funeral. She folded the letter slowly and placed it in the bottom drawer of her desk without replying. Some apologies were for the sender, not the recipient. Some forgiveness was better left to God. The next morning dawned golden and bright. Emily stood behind the glass pastry case at Phoenix Confections, tying her hair into a low bun as the first customers walked in. A mother with 2 sons pointed eagerly at the hazelnut eclairs. An elderly man asked shyly if she still made those lemon poppy seed muffins he loved so much. A young woman with nervous eyes ordered 2 dozen lavender macarons for a bridal shower that weekend. Emily moved among them with quiet grace, her smile warm and genuine. She poured lattes with steady hands, boxed pastries in pink cardboard tied with twine, and laughed softly when a toddler pressed his sticky palms against the glass display to watch chocolate croissants being restocked. She caught her reflection briefly in the espresso machine's gleaming metal. For the first time in months, she barely recognized herself, not because she looked different, but because she looked whole. The shadows remained etched into the corners of her eyes like smoke stains that would never fully fade. But beneath them burned something bright, unbreakable. Hope, strength, freedom. She glanced around her bakery. The bustling tables, the scent of warm brioche, the hum of soft jazz over speakers, the golden Texas sunlight pouring through tall windows. A small smile curved her lips. For the first time in her life, she was not someone's daughter, someone's sister, someone's fiancé. She was just Emily Parker, and that was more than enough. The April afternoon sunlight streamed through the wide bakery windows, illuminating the swirling dust motes above trays of pistachio tartlets and candied lemon madeleines. Emily stood behind the counter in her flour-dusted apron, wiping down the marble surface with practiced rhythmic motions. A small brown envelope lay unopened beside the espresso machine. Its crisp linen paper was stamped with an international postmark and embossed with an intricate gold crest, L'Institut de la Pâtisserie Française, Paris. She'd seen it when she arrived that morning, its elegant foreign lettering standing out among bills and pastry ingredient invoices. She'd left it untouched all day, terrified that hope might bloom again in her chest, only to wither under reality's cold hand. Now, with the last customer gone and Ethan locking up in back, she picked up the envelope with trembling fingers. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears as she slid her thumb under the wax seal, peeling it open with excruciating slowness. Inside was a single sheet of cream vellum, thick and weighty, with embossed lettering that shimmered under the golden Texas sun. Dear Miss Emily Parker, we are delighted to inform you of your acceptance to our Advanced Artisan Pastry and Confectionery program commencing September 5th at our Paris campus. Your talent, perseverance, and dedication to the craft of pâtisserie have distinguished you among thousands of international applicants. We believe your artistry and resilience will enrich our community and further our tradition of excellence. We look forward to welcoming you to Paris. Warm regards, Isabelle Chevalier, Directrice Générale. Emily's breath hitched in her throat as tears blurred the elegant words before her. She clutched the letter to her chest, pressing it against her racing heart. For a long, silent moment, she simply stood there in her empty bakery eyes closed, feeling a bloom of possibility unfurl deep within her ribs. Paris. She'd spent her entire teenage life dreaming of walking down Rue Montorgueil, tasting warm cannelés at Storer, peeking into Pierre Hermé's window displays, and studying the centuries-old art of pâtisserie at its birthplace. A sob of joy and disbelief bubbled up in her throat. She pressed her fist to her mouth, fighting to keep the sound from escaping, though no one was there to hear it, but the empty ovens and flour-dusted countertops. From the back kitchen, Ethan walked in, wiping his hands on a dish towel. He paused when he saw her tear-streaked face and the trembling letter in her hands. "What is it?" he asked softly, his voice already tinged with hope despite her tears. She looked up at him, her eyes shining with an uncontainable luminous light. "Paris," she whispered. "I'm going to Paris." 36 hours later, Emily sat by the window of an Airbus A380 as it taxied down the runway under the pale pink glow of a Texas sunrise. She pressed her forehead to the cold glass, watching the familiar outlines of Austin's skyline slip past the frost-glass towers, the coiling river glinting like molten copper in dawn light, the sprawl of red brick bungalows and bright murals on warehouse walls. Tears welled in her eyes as she scanned the city that had both broken and remade her, a city that had burned down her dreams only to watch her rebuild them stronger and sharper than before. Behind her seat, a toddler babbled happily to his father about airplanes. A college student beside her adjusted his noise-canceling headphones, eyes already closed against the coming 12 hours of flight. Flight attendants bustled down the aisle, checking seatbelts and overhead bins with clipped efficiency, but Emily barely noticed them. Her world had narrowed to the window and the city unfurling beneath her like a long, aching goodbye. The engines roared to life, trembling through her bones, the plane's nose lifting skyward with a lurch that pushed her back against her seat. The tarmac fell away in a blur of concrete and green lawns, the city shrinking below her into a miniature diorama of memories. The limestone bakery on 6th Street where she sold her first pistachio tart. The brick apartment window where she once pressed her palms to glass, praying Logan would come home. The courthouse steps where Madison had been led away in cuffs, tears streaming down her mascara-smeared cheeks. The family ranch house porch where her father had clutched her mother's key to his chest like a talisman against grief. The plane climbed higher into the bruised pink dawn engines, screaming with exertion as they broke through a layer of wispy cloud. Sunlight spilled across the cabin in bright golden sheets, illuminating Emily's tear-streaked face. She didn't wipe the tears away. She let them fall hot and silent against her neck as the plane banked eastward and the city disappeared behind the horizon. She rested her head back against the seat, exhaling a long, ragged breath. Her heart felt heavy with grief and loss, but buoyant with hope. An ache so deep and sharp it felt like being split open only to discover something golden burning inside. Outside the window, the sky stretched vast and endless, washed in hues of pink lavender and pale gold. A new day, a new continent, a new life. Emily closed her eyes, and in the hush of the climbing plane, her voice whispered across the dark quiet of her mind, like a prayer, a promise, a truth forged in fire and forgiveness. Sometimes forgiveness doesn't mean staying. She pressed her palm flat against the airplane window, feeling the thin, cold glass vibrate with the force of their ascent. Below, the clouds drifted like endless white seas, hiding the land she was leaving behind. And as the plane carried her away from everything that had ever defined her, sister, daughter, fiancé, survivor, and toward the woman she was becoming, Emily Parker smiled softly through her tears. Because sometimes forgiveness wasn't about returning to what broke you. Sometimes forgiveness was simply letting go. The humid spring wind swept across the Austin Airport observation deck, tousling Ethan's dark hair as he leaned against the cold metal railing. He stood there, hands shoved deep in his black slacks, watching the silver Airbus A380 taxi onto the runway under a bruised lavender dawn. Its engines roared to life, the vibrations thrumming through his chest like a silent goodbye he could never say out loud. He squinted into the rising sun, watching the massive plane pick up speed wheels screaming against concrete until finally its nose lifted into the cotton candy sky, ascending in a graceful, aching arc. For a long moment, he just stood there silent and still, his dark eyes tracking the plane as it climbed above the city. A bittersweet smile curled his lips, quiet, resigned, proud. "You did it, Em," he whispered under his breath, his voice nearly swallowed by the wind. "You finally chose yourself." He exhaled a slow, ragged breath, feeling the echo of her absence settle deep in his bones like winter chill. But beneath it burned something warm and unbreakable, hope for her and for himself. He turned away from the railing, tucking his hands into his pockets as he walked back to his car. The city was waking up around him, early commuters stopping for coffee runners, pounding pavement along Lady Bird Lake, mothers herding sleepy children into minivans. Life moved forward, indifferent to heartbreak, radiant with possibility. Just as it should. Inside the Travis County Women's Correctional Facility, the fluorescent lights flickered in sterile rhythm along the dim corridor. Madison sat cross-legged on her narrow bunk, the concrete wall pressing cold against her spine. Her hair, once a gleaming curtain of honey gold, hung limp around her face, dark roots stark at the crown. She stared blankly at the peeling beige paint on the opposite wall, eyes dry and vacant. Each day blurred into the next, breakfast trays, head counts, metal gates clanging open and shut like indifferent gods. A sudden rustle at her cell door startled her. She looked up as a guard slid a small cardboard box through the narrow slot, its pink ribbon curling delicately along the edges. Confusion flickered across her sunken features. She reached for it with trembling fingers, slowly peeling away the pale pink paper. Inside sat a single lavender macaron nestled in crisp white parchment. The delicate cookie looked impossibly out of place amid the concrete and iron, like a forgotten dream drifting into a nightmare. Nestled beneath the macaron was a small handwritten note on cream cardstock, the familiar looping script striking her like a slap and a bomb all at once. All. Madison, life burns us all differently. Learn to bake sweetness from your ashes. Heal yourself. No name, no return address, but she knew. Her chest constricted around a pain so sharp it felt like splintered glass beneath her sternum. She crumpled forward, pressing the note to her lips as tears slid hot and silent down her cheeks. For the first time since the sentencing, her sobs were not of self-pity or rage, but of something deeper, older, grief, and the tentative blooming of a realization she'd spent her entire life running from. She was alone. But maybe, just maybe, alone was where healing began. She set the macaron carefully on her lap, staring at its delicate lavender shell and creamy filling. For a long moment, she couldn't bring herself to eat it. It felt too beautiful for her tarnished hands. But then, with a trembling breath, she lifted it to her mouth and took a small, reverent bite. The flavor exploded across her tongue, floral sweet, lightly bitter with almond and vanilla undertones. Tears blurred her vision as she chewed, tasting forgiveness, tasting love, tasting the possibility of redemption. Outside her tiny cell window, the Texas morning burned pink and gold along the horizon. Fade out to black. Soft piano music begins to play minor chords, weaving with quiet hope and melancholic grace. On the empty screen, white serif letters appear illuminated against the darkness. The greatest strength of a woman is not in her ability to forgive. It is in her courage to stand up, turn away from what broke her and keep walking forward. Unknown, the music builds into a quiet crescendo as faint silhouettes emerge behind the quote Emily, walking down a Parisian street lined with cherry blossoms. Ethan gazing out over Lady Bird Lake at sunset. Madison sitting cross-legged on her bunk, eyes closed, palms pressed together in silent prayer. Then all fades to black once more. A final line flickers in small white letters at the bottom of the screen. Phoenix confections will rise again, but in Paris a new fire is about to ignite. A quiet chime sounds. To be continued. The screen fades to the logo Phoenix Confection Series produced by your studio brand. Then darkness swallows the screen entirely, leaving only the quiet echo of piano notes trailing into silence, and the lingering ache in every viewer's chest, the ache of hope healing, and the unbreakable strength of choosing yourself.